Hello and welcome to The Actor and the Engineer. My name is Paul James. I'm the actor.
And I'm Josh Knapp. I'm the broadcast engineer.
Here we go, Josh.
Here we go. We're actually going to talk about a movie that came out in 2020, which seems weird because it is 2020 and 2020 sucks.
I do have to say Chadwick Boseman passed away, and I do want to mention that because you did say 2020 sucks, and that just is adding to it out of nowhere. And
well, he'd been fighting colon cancer for a while, but he kept it from everyone, which is, I don't know what the best thing to do is.
Yeah, that's my point. My point is that that's empowering to me that, I might have a bad back and wake up every morning complaining about it in my head and allowing my temperament to be changed because my back is shooting down pain in my leg. That man made the Black Panther having colon cancer. He made the Five Bloods with colon cancer and literally on the end part of colon cancer when he made that Spike Lee movie. So I'm not saying that you can get through anything because the King of Wakanda got through colon cancer and made that movie. I'm just saying that really puts it in perspective, and it's sad on a lot of different levels. It was shocking to hear that he passed away, but then 2 nights later, ABC played the Black Panther uninterrupted. And it's the first time that my father saw it, at least the first time that I think he recalls seeing it. First of all, he loved every second of it. He was all about it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, yelling, screaming, tearing up, saying, why didn't Michael B. Jordan get an Oscar nomination? I said, a lot of people said the same thing, Dad. I saw Michael B. Jordan's performance for the first time this time. Something escaped me the first couple times I saw the movie. Anyway, it's a fantastic movie. It's historically important, being the first superhero film to be nominated for Best Picture, of all the other reasons why it's historic. An all-black cast, with the exception of 2 of the supporting characters, if you will. But really, it's insignificant that it's an all-black cast. It just happens to be that's what they are. And it's not part of the storyline. It's not in the story, if you will, although it is snippets of it. But it's not the main reason to watch that movie. The movie is about accomplishing something. It's Chadwick Boseman's life. It's about accomplishing something when you're down and out. And to watch it again, it struck me that for the rest of Oscar history, that will be what represents as the first superhero movie to be nominated for Best Picture. And it deserves to be the first superhero movie to be nominated for Best Picture. So I digress because, it's the King of Wakanda, and it's just mind-boggling that had to happen this year. And those pictures of the little boys with their superhero figures around the Black Panther as if it's a funeral, and them crossing their arms, Wakanda forever. It's soul-stirringly touching to me. But anyway, the reason why I brought that up was for the obvious reasons, because it just happened. But also, I don't think I could handle a heavy movie right now. So I think The King of Staten Island is actually the perfect blend, because it's comedic in parts and it's serious in parts. But if it was like this knockdown, drag out, The Lost Weekend, I would be in a corner, balled up, not being able to do it. I couldn't do it. I can't handle that heaviness right now. So the fact that the screenwriters struck this tone in this movie that is unusual. It's not a usual comedic tone. There are things that are funny, but are they? And then the most amazing thing about the film for me is that all the through lines, all the plot lines, you think are going to go one way, and they end up going pretty much the opposite way than you're expecting them to go. And so it's refreshing and it's unique. And Pete Davidson is 100% genuine the whole entire time. There's not a false moment of his in this film. And he's got this deep, rich bravado voice that just is, he has really good diction too. So, I'm listening to that. But it has a good heart. The intention of this movie is to amuse and to make fun of situations, but they take it very seriously, but not to the point where I'm cuddled in the corner going, I can't take it anymore. I can't do 2020 and any films in this year. I can't do it. So it's the right movie for me right now.
Judd Apatow co-wrote this with Pete Davidson. It's loosely based on Pete Davidson's real life, based on his dad, who was a firefighter, lost his life trying to save people on 9/11. In this movie, they kind of skirt around that particular issue, but his character in this film, who his name's Scott in the movie, also lost his father when he was 7 years old, and his father was a firefighter. So we get to see a character kind of like in stasis from pretty much, I guess, that point until now, which he's 24 years old as the film starts. So his mom is played by Marissa Tomei, and he's got a sister, a younger sister, who is actually played by Judd Apatow's daughter, which we saw in This Is 40. Did you see that movie?
Yeah, I saw it. I don't remember her, though.
Yeah, she was just, I think both of his daughters were in that. They were just the daughters of Leslie Mann and Paul Rudd, which I don't think they had really, much to do in that film, but other than to probably say some cute things. But I haven't really gone back to This Is 40. But anyway, I mean, this was actually a fairly serious movie, even though it was a comedy. But Steph and I just recently rewatched 40-Year-Old Virgin, which was Judd Apatow's directing debut, feature film debut. Even though he'd done a few shows before that. But seeing that movie and seeing this movie, it was definite. I could definitely see a difference, and it felt like he relied more on the narrative structure of the film versus in 40-Year-Old Virgin, which was kind of like, here's a concept, we're gonna take that to its end, but in the middle we're gonna have a bunch of fun and do a bunch of crazy stuff and a bunch of improv. But so. But I actually liked King of Staten Island.
I've got nothing bad to say about it. I think the performances are good. I think Bill Burr is amazing. He's borderline supporting actor nomination for me. There are some moments he has in this film that are stunningly honest. And he still is able to do that over-the-top comedic thing.
Have you seen his stand-up? Have you seen any of his stand-up?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, the last play, small little 6 degrees of separation, the last play that I did at the Generic Theater is underground, underneath the Norfolk Scope and the Chrysler Hall. And the Chrysler Hall is the touring show center, a couple thousand people seating. That's where like the Lion King comes. He was doing a stand-up show when we were doing a show downstairs. So actually when I was warming up, he was warming up. And I remember hearing some of his bits. So yes, I've seen a lot of his stand-up, as a matter of fact. Something about his approach I like.
Mm-hmm. I think he's brutally honest. And I think that he also doesn't shy away from his emotions because Bill Burr in his stand-up is brutally honest, and he's also super emotional. And I think that Pete Davidson in his own way is also super emotional, and he's talking about his emotions in a way that a leading actor or a main character, especially a male main character, wouldn't normally talk about their emotions, and also definitely not in a comedy where you would talk about your emotions in that way, or at least you'd be a little bit more, I don't know, he just feels very vulnerable. But I think both of those characters, I mean, and Bill Burr is coming at it from a different angle, but they both are vulnerable, at least at certain points in this film. But I think Pete Davidson is still trying, the Scott character is still trying to, I mean, he's not trying to find himself at the beginning of this film, but due to various factors, he's forced into a situation in which he has to start moving forward. He's just kind of paused his life. And so is his mom, played by Marissa Tomei. They've both kind of paused their lives since the death of his father, her husband. And so you're right, the interaction with Bill Burr, which is hilarious because Scott decides to tattoo a little kid who happens to be Bill Burr's child. And so that's how they meet, but it ends up just kicking things into gear. So yeah, I thought that was really well. And it's also got to be difficult too, because just seeing the trailer, that Bill Burr and Marissa Tomei are going to get together, but seeing how they interact the first time is really interesting because Burr has to get from one place to another from the beginning of that scene to the end of the scene. And it's got to make sense. It can't just be like, hey, I can't believe your kid did this. And why am I even yelling at you because your kid's 24 years old and he's living at your house? But he has to get from that to like, hey, you want to go out and get a cup of coffee? So that has got to be an interesting arc to take. So yeah, I mean, and I've seen him I've seen Bill Burr act in Breaking Bad. And I mean, he's been in a couple of other small roles and a couple of things, but this is definitely the most integral he's been in a film that I've I've seen, in a long time.
The little kid getting tattooed in the woods, in any other comedy, that would be the bit. That would be the joke. And it would be over and done with. The fact that this 24-year-old is irresponsible enough to talk himself into giving a 14-year-old or however old this kid is.
He's 9.
What does he say? He looks 9. Oh, he's 9. He looks 4. Yeah. Funny. Yeah, but he looks 4. Doesn't he turn to his kid and go, sorry? But that's the joke in any other comedy. But it's actually the catalyst for the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
It actually has purpose. It's not just this, somebody spewing out ideas for a comedy. Oh, what would be funny? A little kid getting tattooed by a bad tattoo artist.
Yeah.
That sparked an idea which started something off in this film. So when you find out that that's his kid, you're like, yes, that makes perfect sense. They're utilizing this. And then later on in the film, it turns into something completely different. His relationship with Bill Burr's kids turns into something you're never expecting it to happen. And it's sweet and it's loving and it's cute and it's adorable. And it's interesting that the two little kids are the two people that he talks to the most honest about. Although he's pretty honest with everybody, but he's never condescending to them. He's never impatient with them. He's never verbally abusive with them. He's very real with them. And that also has purpose too. That serves something later on in the film. So it's smartly done.
But I think he has a kindred spirit with them because he's never really grown up to have the responsibility of a 24-year-old. He's essentially the same as someone who's going to middle school or high school because his mom has kind of kept him in this protected state during this time, and she's obviously not gotten out there. And I mean, she's Marissa Tomei. She looks amazing. She could have had a boyfriend by now, but so I think that they've both kind of decided to kind of hit pause on their lives, and the one manifestation of that you kind of see throughout the film is the shrine to her husband and his dad, and how that is placed. And I think that Judd Apatow has actually done a lot better in subsequent movies, as his movies have gone on, in kind of whatever you want to call it, laying breadcrumbs or having kind of like setups and payoffs. And you see that a lot in this film. I mean, just the fact of the shrine being there, that is essentially a setup, and it's a representation. In fact, when Marissa Tomei talks to him about, she's gone out, she's like snuck around him with Bill Burr for a little while, and then she sits him down to have the discussion of like, I'm going out with someone. I don't know if you noticed, but it framed in the background on his shot, you see every time you see him on screen and they're going back and forth talking about this, his dad's shrine is in the background before he even invokes it, before he even says like, hey, look, what about this? What about him? What does he think about this?
Yeah.
So, and I thought that was really cool. And by the way, this was shot by Roger Elswit, the Academy Award winning cinematographer for There Will Be Blood. So, I mean,
good for them.
Yeah. And also I did listen to a podcast with Judd Apatow, and I believe it was shot on film, and I'm pretty sure it was shot on film, and it was all done handheld, which I didn't necessarily notice, but that's a good thing, I think, that I didn't notice it. But it was also mostly when they had just a single camera and a shot, it was operated by Roger Elswit. So that's pretty cool. I mean, just the fact that
is it
Robert Elswit, I think I'm saying it wrong. Robert.
It's Robert.
I'm thinking of Roger Deakins.
How could you not?
That's right. But anyway, so I think that it's interesting that, first of all, that you've got someone who's shot some of these like huge landscape type films, and he's like, no, I want to do this. But it sounds like the shoot was fairly quick. So, it takes them a couple months and then they're done. So I can imagine a cinematographer can move from job to job pretty easily when the shoots are pretty minimal commitment. So how did you like the Belle Powley character, Kelsey, Pete Davidson's girlfriend? Have you seen her in anything before?
No, but that's another storyline. And I guess we should just say spoilers from this point on. Not that there's much to spoil in this movie, and not really, it's not going to ruin anything for anybody. It's certainly, you could probably tell somebody the whole plot to this movie. But yet again, somebody in the narrative I thought was just a way to set up more about how he is just Arrested Development, that he is, younger than his years. Rightfully so on some level. I'm not judging him by any stretch of the imagination. I'm just saying that he is because of his situation. So I liked her a lot. I thought she was honest. I thought she was real. In that scene when they're in the restaurant, and she's like, what are we doing? Wait, you had a graduation party? Wait. The whole dialogue in that scene is excellent, first of all, because it sounds like two people who really have had conversations before. It sounds like somebody from Staten Island without making it sound like an exaggeration, which is something Marissa Tomei did. It's something that Bill Burr kind of does it. He just has that in his voice anyway, but they don't overemphasize it. It's not an exaggeration of how people on Staten Island talk. So I like that. But she becomes a fully formed character throughout the movie. And I like that too. And I like a character who says, I'm going to do this. And people go, you're going to be a clerk in an office in the city for the city planner? What kind of ambition is that? Well, at the age of 20 something, it's more ambition than most of our generation has. First of all. Second of all, I'm focused. And that's exactly what she does. So yeah, I liked her. I'd not seen her or anything. Yeah. I believed her. I'm not sure if she's from that area or if that's a put on dialect.
She's from England.
Oh my God, I'm in love with her now. Yep. I kind of freaking hate her, to be honest with you. I kind of freaking have a love-hate with her now. But yeah, she's the way she holds her head and the way she bobs, but it was not overemphasized. It's like, and this is a strange comparison, but it will make sense. Jennifer Lawrence in Silver Linings Playbook. She's supposed to be from Philadelphia. And the reason why I knew she was going to win the Oscar was because when she walks in and flips that beer open, and I'm Tiffany, by the way, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm related to her. All of my relatives who are female act just like that. And that's not an exaggeration of who they are. So this character in this movie, what's the actress's name again?
Belle Powley.
She has an English name. I should have known. It could have been overplayed. It could have been your stereotypical Staten Island girl. And it wasn't. And it was also nice to have somebody who lives in an area not bashing on the area and actually loving where they live. And the fact that, and she makes a very valid point about Brooklyn, because Brooklyn was a crap hole 20 years ago. Now it's the thing, Hoboken 60, 50, 75 years ago was a pit. Now it's like where people want to live. So she might be right. And it's good to see people from their own area not hating on where they're from just because that's what they do in most movies like this. So I loved her.
Yeah, or even them being just young people and being cynical and being like, oh, I want to get out of here. I hate it.
Yeah, it's nice to see somebody write a character who is under the age of 25, I would assume, because if he's 24, she's probably 24, around the same age.
He said we knew each other in 4th grade. So yeah, they're probably same age.
Right. They grew up together. You're right. I couldn't remember if he said she was 4 when he was 6. I couldn't remember if that was part of it. But it's nice to see a character who is not undermining who they are the whole entire movie just for a laugh. She's not undermining her sense of being by showing her flashy nails and her short skirt, and all of which is part of her character. She's got the eyeliner on, she's got the hair, she's got the lipstick, she's got the nails, she's got the big pumps she's wearing. Although she looks very respectable when she's going in for her exam. I'm not judging her on any level. I'm just saying that could have been played for jokes, and it wasn't. And the fact that it wasn't played for jokes adds to the really sweet quality and humor of that whole scene when she's walking. I'm so nervous when she's walking in to take the test. It's very subtle, but it's so well done. And her reaction when he tells her what he needs to tell her right before that scene. Yeah, I hate her. I hate people that talented.
I have seen her before. She was in, she starred in Marielle Heller's film, The Diary of a Teenage Girl.
Oh my God. Is she the young girl in that?
She is the girl in that, yeah. So I saw that when Can You Ever Forgive Me came out. So that's her.
I saw it too. Yeah, I hate her. It's official. She's on a line. She's on the conveyor belt for an Oscar because it's interesting because in the back of my mind, I think I know who she is when I'm watching the movie last night. But I would have never placed her in that. But now that you said that, I can see it. But she's so awkward and so left of center in the Teenage Diary movie that
she's supposed
I can't
to be,
even.
yeah.
She's so confident. Yeah, absolutely. She's so confident in this movie because she's like, get out. She's like, in most comedies, she would say, get out. And then they would end up sleeping together again. He would end up suckering her into getting laid one more time and probably falling asleep for a couple of hours. In this movie, that doesn't happen. She's like, and you need to get out. Get out now. I loved it.
Well, and that's good. And
okay, I'm back to loving her.
Well, I think that it's interesting that the characters around him, I think, start to realize what he needs, and not only her, but also his mom. She realizes, and I think the Bill Burr character gets her. Ray gets her into a place where she's valuing herself, or Marissa Tomei is valuing herself more, and she's able to step out a little bit more and tell Scott, no, you can't live here anymore, and you need to leave, and this is it. This is how it's going to happen, and that's what kicks off the rest of the film. But just the fact that getting him out of the house and how he kind of meanders towards, after multiple iterations of going to different places, meanders towards the firehouse. That is I think when the film really starts to get interesting. But still, the most important scene to me was when he goes back to her house after a small amount of time, and she's with her friend, or I don't know who she is, friend or sister, maybe it's sister. I think it's her sister, and she's had a little bit of wine, but at the same time, she still kind of puts her foot down, and she realizes, she sees the strings. She sees him trying to get back into the house without really actually doing anything, or with barely doing something, being like, I kind of tried it for a little while, but I want to go back to normal, or what he thinks is normal. But she ends up just putting up a front and, kicking him out again. And that's what really, puts his feet to the fire and forces him to move forward with his life, which he hadn't really had anybody to do that for him yet. So that's, I don't know. I really did like that scene. It was really funny, but then also he seems like he's like a kind of like a straight guy in a lot of the scenes that he's in, whether it's his friends joking with him about his dad's death and thinking that that's what he needs or wants, but that isn't really what he needs or wants. And or whether it's him moving through life with certain ambitions but never pushing forward at them. And I think that that's represented by the tattoo restaurant. Like, he probably knows that that's a bad idea. I would hope that he knows that that's a bad idea, and he knows that that's not achievable. So he's going to keep that as his ambition and in the back of his mind, knowing that that's not achievable, so that he's never actually taking a real risk. And same thing with his girlfriend, not girlfriend. He never wants to take a risk. I do think that the film's a little long though, and there were a couple scenes. What did you think about his kind of crew? He started off with them, and then they kind of went away for a while, and then they come back very quickly. And then that whole interlude scene where he's their lookout and they break into the pharmacy. It seems like it was a little out of place. What did you feel about that scene?
I know what you're talking about. I sense something. I wouldn't say out of place. I would say obvious. It's so obvious that that's a choice, that because everything is so not obvious what's happening, because you think you understand. And back to the Marissa Tomei scene really quick, where the best friend's on the couch, he's trying to get back in. I love the fact that they're calling out exactly what he's doing. Like, they're dumb enough to believe this. And it reminds me of one of my best friend in college quit smoking. We were up all night long. It was like 5 o'clock in the morning. The sun's coming up. He didn't smoke for like 45 minutes. He walked out on his patio. He was like, I quit smoking. And I'm like, yeah, I don't think it quite works that way. And then like an hour later, we drink a beer and he was smoking again. It reminded me of that. It's like, okay, I've been out on my own for 24 hours. I see it. I've learned. I've grown. I'm back. And they're like, yeah, not having it. And really, in any other movie, now it's an obvious choice what he chose to do with her slamming the door in his face, but it's a funny choice. But in any other movie, they would have stepped out on the porch and she would have been like, honey, I know, I'm just trying to save face in front of my friends. Come back 48 hours from now. Instead of doing that, Marissa Tomei slams the door. So it's an unobvious choice, even though, you know, when it happens, you're like, that's funny. I've seen that. It works. It totally works. So I think the scenes with the crew are so clever in the beginning of the film and so smart and so witty and so sharp with the dialogue that they're so witty with their banter that even though they're a bunch of potheads who do nothing but sit around and smoke pot, so much so that they don't feel like they're getting high anymore. Not that I know anything about that. I'm just saying that they still seem smarter than that. They seem smarter than a bunch of people who would want to rob a pharmacy to get whatever they were getting to sell. They seem smarter than that. So when they fall into that cliche, it's just obvious. And then, you know, it's obvious that he has ADHD, or ADD or whatever they say he has. So he picks up his phone. And it's clever in the beginning of the movie when he calls himself out for all of this stuff. I'm not ready for this. I don't like any of this. I'm a child in a man's body. He calls it all out. I can't move out. What are you talking about? I am damaged. I love all of that obvious being honest with the world when you're not honest with yourself. Like he's not telling himself that. He's perfectly okay with just sleeping in his mom's house when he's 24, which I don't think is that old to be sleeping in your mom's house. I'm just saying. I don't think it's that old. Your brain isn't even fully formed, and his is definitely not fully formed with as much weed as he smokes and with a father dying at 7 years old. He has been stinted, and that's it. So when you get to that scene and he picks up his phone, he starts playing a game on his phone, it's just so obvious that I'm not exactly sure why they needed to go to jail in order for that storyline to be complete. You know, I knew that the girlfriend was going to be real. The catfish was going to be real.
Yeah, that's another one of those setup payoffs. Like, yeah, you're right. It's gonna happen.
And it could have happened anywhere. It could have happened in the mall. It could have happened in the beach forest where they tattooed the kid. It didn't matter where it happened. It was going to happen.
It's a reflection of the first scene of the film. Like he, you know, in that first scene of the film, he has kind of suicidal ideations and he closes his eyes while going down the road and he barely makes it out of there. But in this one, he gets into a situation where he's like, I know this could really go wrong, but I'm in a situation where I don't want to have to deal with this. And, you know, he was in that kind of like an attitude and he vindictively called up his friends and was like, okay, let's do this. And then so that's a very similar thing to closing his eyes when he's driving down the road. And so he barely gets out of this situation, just like he barely got out of that situation at the beginning of the film. But you're right, it's too cliched, and all of his friends got caught in there, and it became more of like a joke than it was. Like it seems like there should have been more stakes in that situation, but they were trying to make it funny by all the different ringtones and all the stuff that was going on and him trying to text them. And, you know, it just seemed like the tone was off.
Yeah, the tone is off, but I see what Judd Apatow was trying to do and what Pete Davidson, and there's another screenwriter too, isn't there?
He also writes for Saturday Night Live. His name's Dave Cyrus.
It bodes well for the narrative because the opening sequence is he has escaped responsibility again. Okay. Not only did he almost kill himself and he did
cause a wreck.
He did, right? But he escapes responsibility because he just takes off. Sorry. And the same thing happens with breaking into the pharmacy scene. He escapes responsibility, even though he tells his sister, who's very good in this movie, by the way. There's talent in that family.
Her accent is perfect. And I initially was kind of like, oh, this isn't going to work out. But she actually has a really good New York accent. I think she's from L.A.
I thought she did well, too. I think it was exactly what I liked about what they did with the dialects. The dialect is that they made it part of who this person was because of where they were raised and not a quality of that person. Mm-hmm. Because an accent becomes a quality or a characteristic or a character choice. And sometimes it's overbearing.
It's not a caricature.
It borderlines into that. This never did. Anybody. And Marissa Tomei handles it very well. Speaking of somebody who has an Oscar for almost a caricature accent, brilliantly done, by the way. Don't let me take anything away from her Oscar win because she is great in that. My cousin Vinny. But so I thought, I think her name's Maud, right? Maud Apatow. Yep. Right. Yeah. And that scene in particular, it's a felony, she says. What are you doing? Like, what is wrong with you? And if anything, that's the beginning. That's the catalyst that makes him understand on some level he has to improve. Maybe not change, but he has to improve. His life cannot stay where it's at. You can't make a decision which got all your friends in trouble, even though they were going to do it anyway, because you can't think of an easier way to get out of this situation. Get a freaking job. Okay. Wait tables, sleep on somebody's couch and pay them money. Did you ever think about getting a job and like calling your mom up and saying, hey, I have no place to live. I'll give you $100 a week. Figure it out. He obviously can't because he's not in that. He's Arrested Development. Yeah. You know, he can't think of things like that. So it's not that it's cliche, that scene, and the tone is off, but it is smart in the narrative because it does show one more time that there are consequences for everybody else in your life. And you just ran away from it, just like you drove away from that scene in the beginning. So it's utilized in the narrative, and I'm fine with that. But I don't notice tone as much as you do. But when you point it out, I go, that's when I started to want to look on Twitter when I was watching the movie. Why do I want to look? I'm reading kind of, I vowed to read a book a month and I'm kind of behind. So I finished a book and now I'm reading two at the same time and I'm pretending like that's going to catch me up. They're small. They're like 180 pages. It's not that big of a deal. But I'm like, well, maybe I'll read a chapter. Well, why would my mind drift to that at that moment? Yeah. It must be because something's not working right in that scene. But I am hard pressed to say that I know better than these professionals who are doing this. But you're right.
And Judd Apatow's comedies are also super long. I think this movie is like 2 hours and 12 minutes or something. I mean,
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So it is 2 hours and 16 minutes. So I'm not saying that it shouldn't be that long, but but when you put it up next to other more traditional comedies, like you do feel a difference when watching this movie because it is extended out. Now, there's a lot of scenes where, I mean, I would love to watch another 5 minutes of the scene, you know, whether it's, the firefighters breaking each other's balls or the stories about his dad. And I think that's
the baseball scene.
Yeah. The baseball scene. Yeah. And that's also another one of those scenes where that could have had a super weird shift in tone, but I thought that it was handled very well. Where, yes, we are supposed to feel...
it's reflective.
Yeah, we are supposed to feel awkward in that scene. Like, that is the point of that scene.
But the reason why we feel awkward is because it's reflective of the conversation he has with his stoner friends at the beginning. But yet he has that language and that conversation, that vernacular with his buddies. And it's the same kind of zings about, oh, no, you can't because he's dead. You know, it's the same thing. Oh, we can call him up. Oh, no, you can't because he's dead. It's the same thing. It's just tonally different because of who he's with. Not tonally as in meaning the tone of the movie changes, but because of who he's with.
It's the same words, but it means something totally different.
Which is brilliant. Which is really smart screenwriting, in my opinion. Not that I know much about that, but it's really smart. It's conservative. It's a way of making a point without overusing something. But I was saying Steve Buscemi, when is he not great? When is he not great? And he has a hard job in this movie. He has to be who he is. He has to be in control of those guys, but yet he has to say later on, your dad was a good guy. Even though you were a dick to me at that baseball game, even though you're a lazy little stinky millennial, you need to get a job. You need to get off your mother's couch or out of your mother's house. You need to beg off about your mother's boyfriend. What are you doing? Then he has to turn it and say, and then he has that great scene when, what did you think when you heard his dad died? I thought to myself, Bill Burr says, I wonder if he has kids. And then Steve Buscemi just kind of looks over his shoulder like, well, yeah, he did have a kid. That's his kid. So you need to just let it down, push it back down. And so that's a hard thing for an actor, in my opinion. There are so many ebbs and flows to that small character that Steve Buscemi has, and he handles it brilliantly.
And I think the fact that you have Steve Buscemi giving that story, that, I mean, he's kind of like the key that unlocks the way forward for Pete Davidson, where he humanizes Scott's dad. He shows Scott that his dad was a real person and wasn't this thing to be put up on a pedestal, this idealized version of a human being, that once he loses his dad, he also recognizes at 7 years old that his mom loses her partner and loses the man of the house. Now he's the man in the house. And what does he have to compare himself to? An angelic version of a hero? I mean, that is not doable. You can't ever match up to that. So once he realizes that, once Steve Buscemi tells him that, oh yeah, you know, we did coke sometimes, and you know, your dad was a little crazy and he was all over the place and he wasn't always perfect. And
I believe the statement was, we did coke all the time.
I think he did say. I was trying to mitigate a little bit, but yeah, they did coke all the time. But it was probably
Don't do drugs.
No, I guess it was in the 90s. So dang, I don't know. I didn't know coke was still like the thing in the 90s, but maybe it's always been a thing. But still, the fact that he's able to, he's like, oh, now I can actually directly compare myself to my dad, as opposed to having him up on this pedestal that's never attainable. So he was just a normal guy. I'm just a normal guy. Therefore, I may be good enough for my mom. I may be good enough as the man of the house. I may be good enough to represent my family as a man. So, I mean, that's just the key right there.
In other movies, we would be trying to figure this out ourselves, but they actually say these things in this movie. He actually says, no, tell me something bad about my dad. I have to know something. You know, he was on this pedestal. He says everything that you just said. He calls it out. I need to know he was a human being. And instead of like allowing the audience to, you know, I'm not saying that they spoon fed us, but they allowed the character to speak what we were thinking. And I like that a lot. I like it when you know exactly what a character's thinking and feeling. I mean, there's subtext and there's all these things and blah, blah, blah. I don't know if it's a necessity in a film like this. Probably not. But the point is that he calls it out for what it is. And that's an unobvious choice for a character to do. And I like that. It's not what you would normally expect. You would see some kind of montage of him rehearing Steve Buscemi's thoughts in his ears. And, oh, my dad was a bad guy. And you would see that self-revelation coming to his mind, instead of the character sitting around drinking, saying, no, tell me something bad. I need to hear that. So yeah, I like that.
I think that scene, and also the other scene that kind of like puts it all together, is when he goes out with those guys on a call, and he sees Bill Burr climb up that ladder and go into the house. And when he comes out, doesn't he? I think he comes out with a young girl who's the same age as his daughter, as Bill Burr's daughter. And so that kind of represent, I think to me, that represents like, so yeah, maybe Scott's dad wasn't there all the time because he was at the fire station, or maybe Bill Burr, the Bill Burr character, Ray, isn't taking care of his kids, quote unquote, taking care of his kids by walking them to school, but he is taking care of his kids by providing for them, by having a job, providing for them. And also, if he was with his kids and not at his job, he wouldn't have saved that young girl. You know, that I'm not saying somebody else wouldn't have saved that young girl, but at the same time, like he is also supporting his family while providing a service to the community and being a good role model, and but not in the way that Scott thought he should have been at the beginning of their relationship. So
what I think is interesting about the fire scene that you were just talking about is that, technically speaking, that's as cliche of a scene, because we've seen it a million times in movies, as the robbery scene is a cliche of a scene. But for whatever reason, the tone in that scene, the firefighter scene, is on point. It doesn't waver from the rest of the movie. And maybe it is tone, or maybe it is purpose. Maybe that's the word I'm looking for. The robbery scene doesn't serve purpose for all the other characters that are involved. but the fireman scene serves purpose. So, and I kind of just negated what I said earlier because it serves purpose for Pete Davidson's character because he's walking away without any responsibility in the robbery scene, just like he did at the beginning of the film. But every other character in the fireman scene serves a purpose for their character. You see what they do. You see what Steve Buscemi does. You see what so-and-so does. You hear the calls on the headsets of what people are doing. I'm going in, I'm going under, I've got the window, I got the thing, I'm going up top. You see where these people fit into that scene. And so maybe that's why it has purpose in this movie and the other scene doesn't for me. Maybe it's not tonal, maybe it's purpose. Anyway,
I think that his friends, their characters got wasted by the end of the film.
Well, they started out so great
that
you wanted to know things about them, and they became just more things he could use.
Yeah.
Because he didn't go to jail to visit his friend. He went to jail to sleep on his couch or to sleep in his bedroom because he was in jail now, which is
so you're not using your house. Okay, I'll use it.
That's so bad. At least go one or two times before you ask. You Nimrod.
Oh,
by the way, I need to mention that Pamela Adlon,
from Louis,
plays the ex-wife and Californication, and she has a show called Better Things. Have you seen it?
No, I've heard about it, but I haven't seen it.
Whatever her humor is, I get. She is funny. And she fits perfectly into this movie because she is the cliche Staten Island lady. She's the cliche New Yorker, although she's been in California since she was like 10 or something. So how she became who she was and her persona. But I am now convinced whatever she does, I will follow. If her name comes up, I will see it because her show Better Things, and she writes, produces, directs, chooses the music, cast it. She is the god of that show. And the humor and the tone, speaking of tone, it's crass, but that doesn't bother you. Like if you and Steph sat down to watch it together, Steph might be like, oh, I don't know, I think I'm out. Maybe not. But it's just like this movie. It's sewn together with such heart and soul that it's undeniable the quality of TV she's putting out. So I'm all about her. And I just needed to say her name out
I think
loud.
You're right. And I think we need to put her on the list of naturalistic actors that they don't feel like.
I can't stand it.
Yeah.
I can't. I just want to hear one and but or that sounds fake. Just one time.
You want to hear a line reading, right? Like you want to hear her read a line because she's not reading lines. She's just talking.
I don't understand it. I guess that's why she's been working since she was 12 years old or however old she was when she did Grease 2.
Wow.
That's why she is, on 3 huge hit TV shows. I mean, because Louis was a huge hit. Californication was a huge hit. And believe it or not, Better Things is a huge hit. I don't know if people are watching it like they should, but it is critically well received. She's received an Emmy nomination every year. There are things about it that the writing, just a lot of award season stuff. Not that really is whatever. She's putting out good quality TV. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
She is one of those people, man. What is with it?
Another one of those kind of like setup payoff things was whenever Bill Burr's character Ray said, oh, yeah, I don't have any tattoos. I'm all pasty. I was kind of like, oh, well, that's going to come back later. And so later on, he allows Pete Davidson to tattoo him. And yeah, you can tell, I mean, just the fact that they're hiding the tattoos from the audience for the whole movie, that's gonna kind of come back to pay off in the future. But I mean, it did feel like it was a short runway for the end, which for a 2 hour and 10-minute long movie, you would think that it would be a little bit more. I don't know. You would think that you would see it coming a little bit better, but yeah, it seemed like the way that they kind of wrapped it up felt. To me, it didn't necessarily feel rushed, but it did feel like the particular main characters did get serviced properly. But just getting that kind of family together and representing them as a family with, and I didn't even notice. We rewatched it, the end last night again. So we watched it a couple nights ago and then rewatched the end last night. And seeing the tattoo again, I didn't notice that his dad was in kind of like a star or the sun or something off to the side, along with the 4 people of their family that they've developed. So I thought that was really cool, along with the ghost with the boner and all the, Chinese dragon and all that stuff too.
You said boner. That's hilarious. Here's what's so great about it. Okay, first of all, Marissa Tomei kisses her ex or her husband, the picture of her husband, which made me go, oh yeah, that's who I thought that was. Because when I saw it, I was like, is that his father? What's so great about it is that any other movie, it would be this picturesque tattoo.
Oh yeah.
That's just perfect. It would be a bird of paradise with all these colors, and it would mean something, and it would be significant. There's a ghost with a boner on it, which is hilarious.
But he's got to learn. Like, you see him learning and getting better over time, but still, it's all right there on his back for the rest of time.
Yeah.
That's just hilarious.
There's that show where people tattoo things on other people for revenge.
What?
And I don't like that concept. Yeah.
Is that a reality show?
Yeah.
Oh God.
It's called like Tattoo Don't or something. It's got like this it's got a catchy title to it. But yeah, I don't like that kind of stuff. I would not let anybody tattoo something on me that I cheated on. Like that's the kind of scenarios. I'm not saying that's happened to me. But I'm saying that in that show, they let an ex-girlfriend who got cheated on decide what to tattoo on her ex-boyfriend's back.
Oh my gosh.
And I would never do that. Yeah. And it's things like ghosts with boners, but I just wanted to say that again, but it's really wickedly cruel stuff in my opinion. Like I would never be on that show, and I would never allow anybody to do that, because I also think tattoos are sacred.
Yeah.
I have a few, but they mean a lot. They mean a lot to me, and I think it's sacred. So I wouldn't mess with it. But the fact that there's a Chinese letter on there, and that's the one thing that he said he didn't want, and the fact that Marissa Tomei is like, yeah, no, I know, I'm on, yeah. And the way she handles that scene is so great. She is the greatest at saying what she shouldn't say and acting like she shouldn't act, but you know exactly what she means. I love that. But you're right. You could see that he needed to practice, and that was great, because that's exactly what it should look like. It should look like an art pad where somebody started drawing, and by the end of the end of it, and I love the fact that the faces of the family, you know who they are, but yet they're still a little wonky. Yep. And he says, yeah, I have a problem with the eyes.
Yeah.
Which he said earlier on in the film. So yeah, I think, and I think it's really sweet and endearing that the person who's now going to be, for lack of a better term, surrogate father figure, allowed his surrogate son to do that. And there was never a scene where there's a bunch of scenes where Pete Davidson's character was saying, don't you think it's a little on the nose that the first person in all these years, in 17 years, is a firefighter and all this other stuff? But there's never a conversation between Bill Burr and him about that. There's never a conversation about how obvious of a choice it is. And I love the fact that at the end of the movie, he's like, yeah, I like him. He's got to get rid of that mustache, though. I was like, thank God. What is the deal with that mustache? Was that purposely chosen to be comedic, or was that just, what was that choice? I just don't understand. Was it like, did Bill Burr see some firefighter in New York with that mustache, some redheaded firefighter with that mustache, and be like, yep, that's it? Because it is obnoxious, that mustache. It's wrong on so many levels. It would have been hard pressed for me to not find clippers and just accidentally clip it one day when I was on set with him, because it's so obnoxious, that mustache. But good for him. There's never that scene where you're now my surrogate father, but there is, because the tattoos represent that. So once again, it's this unobvious, if that's a word, choice that the screenwriters and Judd Apatow and Pete Davidson decide to do. And that's what makes these movies unique. And that, I think, is Judd Apatow's thumbprint. I'm not so sure if he's an auteur, which is how Jodie Foster says it, by the way, people. And I can't say it the other way, so I'm going to say auteur. I'm not so sure he fits into that category right now, but he definitely has a sensibility that is only his. And I realized it when I was thinking about the film and all the unobvious choices. Yet again, use that word. Trainwreck's the same way, because she's a lead character who's a female who sleeps around, who doesn't want to have anything to do with you after she slept with you. And that's a role reversal thing that most people in movies, you don't see them doing that. Usually that's a guy's place in a movie. So I like the fact that, this movie is about a young man coming of age, if you will,
Yeah.
because this is his coming of age time, even though he's way past that. But really, it's just as much about his sister, and it's just as much about his mother, and it's just as much about his girlfriend. Yeah. And so these are fully formed female characters, even though the lead characters are male. And that to me is important.
Yeah.
And I think that's a thumbprint.
I think that, I mean, if you look back at Judd Apatow's filmmaking, filmography, it is about people who've pressed pause on their life. I mean, you go back to 40-Year-Old Virgin. He's pressed pause on his life for one reason or another. He was in situations where it was uncomfortable. And so he was just like, you know what? I'm not going to deal with that. I'm going to wait for that for later. And then Knocked Up, someone who's smoking weed out of a fishbowl at the beginning of the film now is forced into being a father and forced into growing up, for lack of a better term, or at least moving forward with his life and changing his life. But he doesn't necessarily have to quote unquote grow up. He doesn't have to change his attitude. He just has to add on these responsibilities to his life. And you can just keep moving forward.
Same with her too.
Yeah. Katherine Heigl.
Same with her. I mean, if it wasn't for her getting pregnant, she would not be making the choices that she was making. You know, She was an MTV commentator or something, whatever she was.
An on-air talent, yeah.
Yeah, not that that's a bad thing, but that's not the world you raise a kid in. But although that's totally different nowadays.
But
yeah, absolutely. Oh, and the Leslie Mann film, 40, what's it called? 40? No, This Is 40. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Same thing.
Yeah.
It's so the same thing. They're in their 40s and they're going eating brownies in a hotel. It's so great. That scene is so great. Paul Rudd is fantastic in that. They get a complaint and whoever, the hotel worker, comes up and he walks across the floor. What is that? Yeah, it's funny. That's good stuff. That's good stuff.
But yeah, I think that you're right. He does kind of have a somewhat of a lean towards a particular subject matter. But in listening to the DGA podcast, somebody was interviewing Judd Apatow how he makes films. And he's, in a lot of ways, he's kind of like the anti-Bong Joon-ho, because he shoots a lot of stuff. He shot 3 different endings for this movie, like 3 different scenes doing different things, and decided where to put them, how to arrange them, whether to keep them in, whether to keep them out. And he's essentially just piling up a huge stockpile of stuff so that he can create a movie in the edit bay, create a movie in the edit suite. And he's willing to kind of move and change because he's very sensitive to the audience. They kind of described, or he described, what the process was once he has a particular cut of the film. Like for a movie like this, he said he had like a 3-hour long cut. He showed it to like 20 people, his family and friends, and then he showed it to like 40 people, and then he would show it to like 60 or 100 people. And this is all before they do any kind of testing with just random people. So when he was in one of those like 20 or 40 person screenings, one of the people who was there was Paul Thomas Anderson. And so he was, he would, and he said that when he goes, and he said he invites Jonah Hill and, people he's worked with before who are filmmakers, Paul Thomas Anderson, all these people to kind of like come in and just kind of like, he's like, you know what, just give it to me with both barrels. Tell me what you didn't like. And he said that a lot of times somebody may say like, I didn't like, whatever, I didn't like the ending, or this character this character isn't right. It should do, they should do this, or you should completely remove this scene or move this scene to here. And he said that, and a lot of times what he sees or what he gets from them is not necessarily like quote unquote how to fix it, but where the pain points are. And he focuses on that and determines how he can make those pain points less painful, or remove them, or change them in some way to make the film better. So for him, it seems like filmmaking is a lot more collaborative, whereas I don't know if somebody like Bong Joon-ho, just the fact that like I've got the screenplay book, the storyboard book, and it is there are scenes in there that were shot that are not in the movie, so he's not married to every single storyboard that he writes or that he draws, but at the same time he has a very singular vision, and it seems like Judd Apatow is a little bit more pliable and is willing to make sure that he's able to take the audience on a particular journey, and then he's able to get them from point A to point B to point C and make it a satisfying journey. I'm not saying that either one of those filmmaking styles is better than the other. I'm just saying that it is definitely two different ways to make a movie.
I think the screenplay dictates that to the director. So I think when Judd Apatow finds his Parasite, meaning that kind of story, not that specific story, but a story that is that concise and that taut and that well written. Not that anything that Judd Apatow is not that has worked on isn't that well written. I'm saying that that is a specific narrative. And so when Judd Apatow finds that narrative and that story, that's when Judd Apatow will be nominated for Best Director, and that picture will be nominated for Best Picture. And when Bong Joon-ho finds a Knocked Up or a 40-Year-Old Virgin or something like that, then you'll have all of those extra scenes that Bong Joon-ho decided to film that aren't in the movie because he decided for whatever reason they don't work. I think the screenplay dictates that. I think if you're going to do something about a 24-year-old man who is really 7 years old because his father was killed as a firefighter, and you don't, that's a comedy, and you don't leave yourself open to some kind of improv with the actors or some kind of, hey, I have an idea for this scene, can I try it? If you don't leave yourself open to that, then I think you're missing the point when you're making a movie like this. I think it's very specific to whatever the screenplay is. And I think that's why Judd Apatow can film 3 different endings and use whichever one he wants, or find out what Jonah Hill and Paul Thomas Anderson thinks about his movies. Because if the screenplay is allowing for that openness, then I think you should take it. And like I said, I think if he had a Vice or a Big Short, because Adam McKay is a good example of the same side of this track.
Anchorman. I mean, Judd Apatow's the reason why they were able to make that.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So, and it's interesting to me because I think, not to pat myself on the back, but I think I'm right. Because why would you ask somebody like Jonah Hill, who has 2 Oscar nominations for 2 semi-serious roles, although there's comedic parts in both of those 2 movies that he's nominated for, but it's not super bad. It's not an outright comedy. Moneyball is not an outright comedy. And Wolf of Wall Street, which was on the other day, and I watched it again, and he's brilliant. And that's a brilliant movie. I love that movie.
That's going to be one of the best movies of the 2010s in 30 years.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. That Quaalude scene is, I still can't figure out how he technically did what he did. It's just drop dead brilliant. But Paul Thomas Anderson has a completely different reputation than Jonah Hill if you look at it on base level. But yet he's asking both of those 2 people about his comedy, about a 24-year-old who's really 7. So obviously he's open to whatever. And I think that's important. But I would guarantee you that if the material was Parasite, Judd Apatow is such a strong director that he would need to ask Paul Thomas Anderson what he thought before he actually put the movie together, because the material is different. It's just different. It speaks a different language. So yeah, I end with what you ended with I think both are valid ways of doing stuff. And I've seen it done many different ways in the theater. You're not supposed to change words and you're not supposed to change things in a script, although people mess with that too. Because what's stopping anybody from saying whatever they want to say on opening night, other than getting yelled at after opening night? I've seen it happen. But you have a reverence for the script, and you should stick to the script, because you wouldn't change Shakespeare. You wouldn't change To Be or Not to Be. You wouldn't flip that around and make it your own. So why would you change anything else? But at the same time, I've seen directors say, okay, in this scene, you do his lines and she does your lines and you do her lines, and see how that go. And it's fascinating to watch somebody's take on what you've already done, and somebody's take on your lines, and somebody's take on your moment. It flips it. It gives it a new perspective. So I agree with you. I think both are valid, and aren't my words.
Yeah.
Aren't my words. There's going to be a script, comes Judd Apatow's way. Leslie Mann will star in it too, because I think she has more to her than we've seen. We've seen a lot, and she's a talent, and she's funny, and she's got a soul, and she's got quirkiness to her, but there's some Adam Sandler thing going on with her where she's been kind of like pulling the wool over our eyes. And then one day she's going to come out and you're going to be like, wait, what? She's doing a British period piece and she just was nominated for the Oscar. Mark my words.
All right. Well, we'll put it down. Well, I think that just that whole story of how he makes these movies, it also shows the power of editing too, because you can form a fully functioning film from a group of scenes that are coherent and but don't necessarily have to be placed in the same order as they were in the script. And the more you shoot and the more options you have and the more alternate takes and different improvisations you have and different rabbit holes to go down, you can really reshape a film based on those performances and based on those particular scenes. So it just bolsters the fact that you make the film 3 times. You make it once in the writing, once in the shooting, and once in the editing. So, and ultimately, the last one is the only time that counts. The editing is the only one that really, really counts. Well, you can check us out on the web at actorandengineer.com. You can go to facebook.com/actorandengineer. You can tweet us at actorengineer, and we are on YouTube. Just search for Actor and Engineer Podcast, and you will find us. And we'll see you next time.